You know, some stories, they just feel ancient, don't they? Like they bubble up from the ground itself, whispered on the wind. They're about these bargains made in the middle of the night, about strange patterns that seem to defy all logic, and of course, secrets that just refuse to stay buried. So today, we're going to peel back the layers on these modern myths, the stories we tell ourselves to try and make sense of the completely senseless.
Our story starts where so many great ones do, at a lonely crossroads, deep in the American South. You can almost feel it, right? The air is heavy, the moon's hiding behind the clouds. It's one of those places where worlds meet, and a choice has to be made. And right here, according to the legend, a deal is struck. A young musician, so desperate for a talent that's beyond human limits, offers up the only thing he really has of value, his soul.
That musician, the story goes, was Robert Johnson. The legend says he met the devil himself at that crossroads, and he traded his soul for the power to play the blues like nobody on earth. And almost overnight, his skill became, well, supernatural. He was an absolute phenomenon. But that kind of talent, the legend warns, it comes with a price.
Then in 1938, under some really mysterious, maybe even violent circumstances, Robert Johnson died. He was only 27 years old. A tragic end for such a brilliant musician. But as it turns out, his death was just the beginning of a much, much bigger, and honestly, a much stranger story.
Yeah, because Johnson, he wouldn't be the last. Decades later, a really disturbing pattern started to emerge, connecting some of music's brightest lights by their incredible talent, their high-risk lives, and that one fateful number.
Just think about this stretch of time. Between 1969 and 1971, the music world was just completely rocked. Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, guitar god Jimi Hendrix, the absolute powerhouse that was Janis Joplin, and the poet frontman of The Doors, Jim Morrison. All of them gone, all of them brilliant, and every single one of them just 27 years old.
Back then, people just saw it as a dark coincidence. But the idea didn't really explode until 1994 with the death of Nirvana's Kurt Cobain. That's when the concept of a club truly became a phenomenon.
It was the sheer power of this one quote that really cemented the myth. When Cobain's grieving mother said this, her words were picked up by the Associated Press and shot around the globe. That stupid club. All of a sudden, the pattern had a name, and the myth had its most famous modern member.
So, what are we actually looking at here? Is this a curse? Some kind of weird statistical anomaly? Is it a deal with the devil playing out over generations? Or is it just us, as humans, needing to find a pattern in the chaos of a tragedy?
Well, when you actually dig into the data, the whole myth starts to unravel pretty quickly. A big study back in 2011 found absolutely no statistical spike in musicians' deaths at age 27. And then there's the whole white lighter curse, this story that members of the club died with white Bic lighters in their pockets. Except, as Snopes pointed out, Bic didn't even start making white lighters until 1973, years after Hendrix, Joplin, and Morrison had died. Actually, the research shows the most common age for a famous musician to die isn't 27, it's 56.
Okay, so the 27 Club is a myth, a story we built to find meaning in tragedy. But what happens when the tragedy is so huge, so world-changing, that the official story is the one that starts to feel like a myth? Well, that's when a whole different kind of story starts to bubble up, a counter-narrative, one that claims the truth isn't just unknown, it's being actively hidden.
The assassination of President John F. Kennedy. I mean, that's probably the ultimate official story in modern American history. The Warren Commission gave its answer, one lone gunman. But for decades, a very different story has been told by a man who claims he was not only there, but that he was the one who pulled the trigger.
According to a man named James Files, a former mob enforcer, the hit on JFK was a joint operation between the CIA and organized crime. He claims the original plan was for the Chicago outfit to do it, but their boss, Tony Accardo, refused. He said, "No way, not in my city." And so, the whole operation was moved to Dallas.
Files' confession is full of these chillingly practical details. He talks about picking his spot on the Grassy Knoll, not for the perfect shot, but for the perfect escape route. He had a jacket that was plaid on one side. He could just reverse it, and suddenly he looks like a railroad worker, someone who could just melt into the crowd and walk away.
And this is the absolute core of Files' claim. This dark partnership between shadowy government agents and powerful mob figures. An alliance to take out a president who they both saw as a threat. His story paints this picture of a hidden power structure,
just operating completely outside the law.
Listen to how he describes his exit, just with the cold precision of a professional. Fire the shot, eject the shell casing, pop it in his mouth, put the weapon in a briefcase, reverse his jacket. He even says he bit down on the shell casing, leaving his own unique mark on it, and just left it on the fence before calmly walking away. The whole thing, he says, took less than 30 seconds.
Now, look, whether James Files' story is true or not is a huge debate, but it's power. The reason it's persisted for so long, it's not really about the facts. It's about the anatomy of the story itself and what it gives to people who feel like the official story just doesn't add up.
You see, a story like this has all the key ingredients. You've got a direct first-person confession that's packed with tiny details. It involves the shadowy network of untouchable forces like the CIA and the mob. It gives you a simple, even if it's terrifying, answer for a really chaotic, complex event. And maybe most important of all, it claims to be the hidden truth, filling that void left by an official explanation that for a lot of people just never, ever felt complete.
So whether we're talking about the 27 Club or the man on the grassy knoll, what we're really seeing are two different kinds of myths that serve a very, very similar human need.
At the end of the day, these stories create order from chaos. A supernatural club of cursed musicians feels more intentional, right? More meaningful than just a random series of tragic deaths from addiction and mental health struggles. And a secret plot to kill a president feels more comprehensible somehow than the idea that one lonely, forgotten man could single-handedly change the entire course of history.
This quote from Bizzles it gets right to the heart of why these counter-narratives take hold and flourish. It's this belief that once an official story is set in stone, it can't be changed, even if it's wrong. And that creates a vacuum, a space where alternative stories can grow, fed by doubt and a really deep distrust of authority.
And all of this leaves us with one final big question. From a deal with the devil at a dusty crossroads to a conspiracy in the heart of the government, the stories we choose to believe say so much about us. They reflect our fears, our suspicions, our desperate search for meaning in a chaotic world. And ultimately, they force us to ask ourselves which story is really more powerful, the one we're told or the one we choose to believe.